Well, one of the biggest factors in a successful growing season is, of course, the weather. We can't control that, but we can do things to mitigate some of the causes of maybe either excessive moisture or not enough moisture. So farming practices have evolved to help kind of help that out, so it doesn't affect the crop yield as much.
The weather just varies greatly year to year. It's unpredictable. It's part of what we navigate through as farmers, and in a lot of ways it keeps us on our toes, and we just learn to adapt to it and become smarter for working with it. But what I have noticed is in the past probably 5 or 6 seasons, we've really had some great amount of later season precipitation. And so that has been in the form of extreme hail events. We've had torrential downpours. We've even had really heavy snow that's come in when we're in the middle of harvest. And a lot of times it will flatten our crops. And that's tremendously challenging to get those crops to dry down later in the season, and then also to get in there and scoop the harvest off the ground is not always fun. But it's part of it, and so those are a few challenges that we've seen in this area with weather anyway.
My dad in the early 70s, the same thing. He had some really great years, and then we hit the 1980s, and then it was tough, right? It got dry, and we hit a dry cycle, and there was a lot of lean years. So I think we kind of go through those same cycles.
We have had heavy snow that will come in, and it will flatten the crop just like a pancake. It's as flat as a lawn in the city. And we will go in there with our headers on the combines, and we'll put them right down to the ground, and we'll angle them forward, and we need to get underneath that crop and get it off the ground, and it just makes it very difficult because a lot of times you'll end up picking up dirt with it, you'll put rocks in the combine and all kinds of other things, and it's just a tremendously challenging thing to do because your combine is not meant to be like a scoop shovel or a backhoe or something, but we joke about how sometimes that ends up being the case, unfortunately, to get the harvest done. Sometimes where we are, just in terms of the Rocky Mountains and being on the other side of the city, oftentimes we do need a little bit of help in dry down. When it gets to the end of the season, we find that a lot of times our crops, they get to a certain point in maturity, and then they just like to stay there, and they don't like to go to that final point and really finish off curing. And so sometimes the wind can actually factor in. It depends on the time of the year, but the wind can really help to cure the straw and finish with that dry down for our crops. And then, of course, other times when wind is just your worst enemy, and a lot of times it's in the spring, and you can see in your plants, you can see wind stress and heat stress apparent on little leaves, just like you can with any kind of plants.
Well, I have noticed changes in the weather for sure. It's kind of, once again, going back to the past and seeing these kind of incidences and things that have happened in the past in our climate, and we've had dry spells, we've had wet spells and all that. So for me, I've noticed the last few years that it's been tougher to get dry grain. So what I've done is I've went out and purchased a grain dryer, and just to kind of help me out with that, it's another tool to deal with it.
Like I say, we've had some pretty tough harvest conditions where it's been difficult to get the crops down to a dry enough harvest point. But we also just know that sometimes you get these beautiful harvest days that pop up in the middle of November, and you just got to be ready to go and jump in your combine and really make the most of it.